I remember when Pac-Man came out, so I'm not going to give my exact age because I already feel old enough as it is. But let me just say I'm in my 50s. My dad passed away about 6 months ago from cancer. Before he went, he made me promise I'd scatter his ashes along Route 66. The real Route 66, not the interstate that replaced it. He grew up driving that highway back when it was still the main artery across the country, before I-40 made it obsolete. Some of my earliest memories are him telling me stories about those trips, the freedom he felt, the little motor courts and diners, camping under the stars when he couldn't afford a room. He wanted to go back to that road one last time, even if it was just his ashes. So I recruited 2 of my buddies, Mike and Dan, and we planned out a week-long trip. We started in San Bernardino, drove through Barstow, then pulled off onto Old National Trails Highway after Barstow to spread some of his ashes. The desert was beautiful in that harsh, unforgiving way. I said a few words, nothing fancy, and we moved on towards Needles. The next stop was east of Kingman, Arizona. More desert, more memories of my dad's stories. We made it to Sitgreaves Pass that evening and scattered a bit more. The sun was setting and the light was amazing, all oranges and purples spreading across the sky. Dad would have loved it. We decided to do what he used to do sometimes and find a spot off a back road to camp. It wasn't exactly legal, so we didn't light a fire, just the moon and stars for light, flashlights if we needed them. It felt right. Dad always talked about how free and independent he felt out there on the road, and the roadside camping was part of that whole experience. I woke up around midnight to something moving near our campsite. Not loud, but enough to pull me out of my sleep. Initial thought was wildlife, coyotes, maybe a javelina. But we were close enough to the road that it could have been someone who spotted us and wanted to cause trouble. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the area slowly, trying not to wake Mike and Dan. That's when my light caught it. A coyote, maybe 30 feet away. Usually they're skittish, bolt as soon as they see you. This one stopped and looked directly at me. I mean, right in my eyes, and I froze. I literally couldn't move. I tried to lower the light and my hand wouldn't respond. Then the coyote bolted into the darkness and suddenly I could move again, like whatever held me had let go. The look in that animal's eyes still gives me shivers. I've seen coyotes before, plenty of them. This was different. I could tell it was thinking. I know how that sounds, but there was an intelligence there that wasn't natural. It wasn't looking at me the way an animal looks at a person. It was looking at me the way a person looks at a person. I didn't sleep well the rest of that night. We packed up at daybreak and headed out. Our next stop was the Hackberry area. We pulled over at a scenic spot to spread more ashes, and I swear I saw the same coyote. The same markings, same size. It was watching us from maybe 50 yards away. I blinked and it was gone. Now, I'm not an idiot. Coyotes can't run 65 miles per hour. Unless this one had an Acme rocket pack strapped to its back. There's no way it followed us. But something in my gut told me it was the same animal. At Peach Springs Overlook, there it was again, just watching as I scattered my dad's ashes. Always positioned where I'd be sure to see it, like it wanted me to know it was following. By the time we reached the Gallup, New Mexico outskirts, I was actively looking for it. Sure enough, there it was again, watching. I finally asked Mike and Danny if they'd been seeing it too. They both looked at me like I was crazy and said no, they hadn't seen any coyote. So now I'm wondering if I'm losing it. Grief does do weird things to people, I figured. Our last stop before turning back was the Continental Divide area near Grants and Milan. We stayed at this old secluded motel that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Mike and Danny wanted to go out for a beer, but I stayed behind. I hadn't been sleeping well and figured if I went to bed early, maybe I could actually rest and we'd make good time back to California. It was about 8 p.m. when I heard a knock on my window. I ignored it at first, probably just the wind or something hitting the glass. Then I heard it again and again. Finally, I got up and looked. A man, on all fours, wearing what looked like animal furs, was crouched outside my window. We made eye contact for maybe half a second before he scrambled off into the darkness. Not running upright like a person would, but on all fours, and fast at that. It's not something you see every day. I stood there trying to process what I'd just witnessed. When Mike and Danny got back an hour later, I didn't mention it. I didn't know what I would say. But I didn't fall asleep until they were back, and even then, I woke up multiple times. No bad dreams, but this feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I saw the coyote one more time on the drive back. We didn't do any more roadside camping. We stayed in hotels the rest of the way. I've been home for 2 weeks now. Haven't seen the coyote since, but I still wake up some nights with that same feeling, like something's watching me. My rational brain says it's grief, stress, or lack of sleep. But another part of me doesn't know what to make of it all. I don't know what I did to make this thing angry or why it would follow me like this. I was just spreading my dad's ashes and honoring his wishes. Maybe I disturbed something I shouldn't have, trespassed somewhere we shouldn't have been. I don't have any answers. I'm using a throwaway account because some of the people involved still live in the area, and I don't want this traced back to them. I'm 37 now, and this happened when I was 17. This story is about a summer job I had working as a counselor at a camp up in northern Minnesota, maybe an hour or so from the Canadian border. It was your usual summer camp, rustic cabins, a main lodge, a lake, and a whole lot of woods. It was a month-long gig, and I was excited for the paycheck and the escape from my hometown. This was back in the early 2000s, maybe 2001 or 2002. The first week was great, standard camp stuff, teaching knot tying, leading nature walks, and making sure the 11 and 12-year-old boys in my troop didn't kill each other. Nothing even remotely weird. The weird stuff started in the second week. I had a couple of kids who were usually pretty quiet start telling me things during our afternoon hikes. At first, it wasn't much. One boy, let's call him Alex, mentioned seeing a really hairy man walking through the trees next to our trail. He said the guy was tall, bent over, and moved without making a sound. The next day, 2 other kids, twins actually, swore they saw a huge dog walking upright on 2 legs, back behind some trees. I didn't dismiss them outright, mainly because they weren't the type to cause trouble or make up stories. Plus, the descriptions didn't match. A hairy man or a dog walking on 2 legs? It sounded like they were seeing some kind of large animal they didn't understand. A bear, maybe, or a very big coyote. And their young imaginations were filling in the gaps. I figured the hairy man was just a trick of the light on a person wearing a dark backpack, or something equally mundane. I told them to be more observant and not to worry. I did report it to the head counselor, but they didn't seem too concerned. The second week ended, and the start of the third week brought something else, a smell. It was a unique, sickening stench. The closest I could ever come to describing it was a mix of really old dead fish and something metallic, like stale pennies, but turned up to the maximum. The smell didn't follow any kind of pattern I could figure out. Sometimes it would hit hard near the dining hall around 9 p.m. Other times it was near the lake cabins at midnight. It would come on strong, hang in the air for a few minutes, and then just dissipate. I asked the other counselors about it. A couple of them said they had smelled it too, but didn't know what caused it. I chalked it up to something being wrong with the camp's plumbing, or maybe one of the boys had found a dead fish from the lake and stashed it somewhere as a gag. Then came the night my roommate, Sarah, saw something. It was late in the third week, maybe around 11:30 p.m. Sarah had gone to the main shower room, a small cinder block building about 100 yards from our cabin, after the last round of checks. I was reading a book when she burst through the cabin door. She was hyperventilating, pale and panicking. She kept saying, "There's a maniac. There's a maniac on camp." It took me a solid 5 minutes to calm her down enough to speak coherently. She explained that she had just finished her shower and was drying off when that horrible dead fish and metal smell started flooding the room. She said it was so strong and sickening that it made her feel instantly nauseous. She threw her clothes on and was bolting for the door when the motion sensor light in the room suddenly went out. I hated that thing. It always went off at the worst times. Anyways, she started waving her hands and jumping around in the dark, trying to trip the sensor to get the light back on. That's when she saw it. The shower room had a couple of frosted privacy panes that let in sunlight during the day. It was dark out, but the camp had a street light positioned near the path from the bathrooms, so you wouldn't break your neck walking back to the cabins at night. A shadow moved in front of one of the panes. Sarah said it was crazy tall and broad. It moved slowly at first, then stopped directly in front of the window. It turned its head, and even through the frosted glass, with the dim backlight, she saw a clear profile of a dog's snout. It took her a second, but then she realized the dog wouldn't be that tall. It had to have been walking on two legs. She said she didn't even breathe. The fear was so intense it was paralyzing. Then, thankfully, a couple of older boys in a nearby cabin started laughing really loudly. The sound must have startled whatever it was, because it bolted. She waited a minute, then ran all the way back to our cabin without looking back. Hearing it from Sarah, who was 19 and a responsible adult, completely changed the dynamic. Reports from 11-year-olds are easy to write off, but this was different. I tried to remain calm for her sake, but inside, I was terrified. Her description sounded like a werewolf, or something equally absurd, but I didn't know what else it could have been. Nothing further happened for almost a week. The smell came and went, but I made sure to walk to the showers with Sarah. The final sighting happened 2 days before the camp ended. We were having our final big bonfire before the campers went home. The next day was cleanup day, and the day after is when the parents came to get them. After the kids were tucked in, Sarah and I stayed back with a couple of the male counselors, Mark and James, to talk and hang out. It was getting late, maybe 10 p.m., and we decided to call it a night. Sarah had told the boys her story, and they were, of course, a little skeptical, but mostly just spooked. As a courtesy, they offered to walk us back to our cabin. We doused the fire and started walking down the dirt trail. Then that smell hit us. It was even stronger than before, just sitting on the damp night air. Sarah gasped and started to hyperventilate, clutching at my arm. The boys immediately went silent and on high alert. Then, in a spot where the trail curved ahead of us, we all saw it. Something darted across the path. It was only visible for a split second, mostly because of the sliver of moonlight filtering through the trees. I didn't get a good look, but I noticed a few things instantly. It was on two legs. It was man-shaped, but really tall and bulky, and the moonlight caught a patch of very dark, almost black fur. Sarah didn't hesitate. She screamed and took off running, The boys yelled something I didn't catch, and then they ran toward where the thing had disappeared. I ran after Sarah. I caught up to her inside the cabin and managed to get her calmed down in her bed. I told her I'd be right back, grabbed a flashlight, and went back out to find the boys. I found them walking back into camp about 10 minutes later. They were shaken and silent. They said they didn't find it, but James, who had been leading the way, was able to confirm what we had all seen. Whatever it was incredibly tall, on 2 legs, and moved faster than anything he had ever seen. We cleaned up the next day, and the kids left the day after. Sarah and I never spoke about it again until we were both far away from the camp. We both agreed it was like something out of folklore. For a long time, I just filed it away as a werewolf sighting. It seemed the most logical fit for a 2-legged canine. But a few years ago, I started seeing stories online about the Dogman. When I learned about the sightings, the descriptions of the smell, the massive size, the way it walks upright, and especially the fact the kids saw it during the day, it all clicked. Knowing there's a name for it, Dogman, is weirdly reassuring. Werewolves seem too supernatural. A gigantic 2-legged dog is still terrifying, but it somehow feels more real, more like something that could actually exist in the deep dark woods of northern Minnesota. I'm posting because I've seen some others talk about their experiences, and I want to get mine out there too, even though I have zero proof any of this happened. I live in a really small town, old farming community, the kind where everyone knows everyone, so I'm not going to give my name, because if I did, my neighbors would know exactly who I am, and the last thing I need is people thinking I've lost it. My house sits on 5 acres at the edge of town. Deer come through all the time. I've always liked having them around, so I put out a salt lick and some food at the back of my property. Over the years, I got to know the usual herd pretty well. They'd let me get within 50 feet or so, and I'd watch them in the mornings while I had my coffee. It was nice and peaceful. Then one day, they just stopped coming. I went out multiple mornings in a row and didn't see a single one. I figured they'd moved on or something had spooked them. Deer can be skittish. But what was weird is that the salt lick and food were still being eaten. The food I could explain away. Raccoons, possums, whatever. But the salt lick had huge chunks taken out of it. Not the kind of wear you'd see from rodents nibbling. Big pieces, like something had been biting into it. I thought maybe a black bear, but there hadn't been any sightings reported, and no other sign of one around. No tracks or scat. So I decided to go out one night and see what was going on. Got out there before sunset and found a spot near some trees where I could watch without being seen. I waited a couple hours after dark, then gave it another 30 minutes just to be safe. Nothing showed up. I was about to pack it in when, maybe 10 minutes later, I saw movement in the tall grass at the back of the field. It was a deer, a really big one. The moonlight was good that night, so I could see it pretty clearly as it walked toward the salt lick. The thing was massive, not elk-sized, but bulkier and thicker than any deer I'd ever seen. When I turned to the side, I noticed its antlers. They were all twisted up, not like they'd been damaged in a fight, but like they had grown that way. Then it started on the salt lick, and that's when I knew something was really off. Deer lick salt, that's why it's called a salt lick. Sure, sometimes they might take a little nibble here and there, but this thing was digging into it, taking chunks out with its teeth and chewing on them like food. I'd never seen anything like it. I started backing away slowly, trying not to make noise. Of course, I stepped on a twig and it snapped. Normally that would send a deer running, but this thing simply looked around for a second and then went right back to chewing. I kept backing up, keeping my eyes on it, until I felt like I was far enough away. And then I turned and ran back to the house. After that night, my dog wouldn't go outside after dark anymore. She's a little thing, usually fearless, but suddenly she'd plant her feet at the door and refuse to budge once the sun went down. I figured the deer, or whatever it was, had been coming closer to the house, even though I hadn't seen it again. A couple weeks later, I had to fix a hole in my garden fence. The garden's about halfway between the house and the back of my property. It took me longer than expected because I had to make a couple runs to the hardware store for things I'd forgotten. The sun hadn't set yet when I finished, so I thought I was fine. But when I looked up, there it was, about 200 feet away, just staring at me. I fumbled for my phone to get a picture. I only looked down for a second to pull it out of my pocket, but when I looked back up, it was gone. Vanished. I don't know how something that size moved that fast without making noise. That's when I decided to put up a trail cam in the tree I'd hidden behind that first night. I have a cheaper model with a low glow IR light, and I checked it for 3 days straight. Nothing but a few shots of coyotes. I figured maybe it could see the IR and was avoiding the area, so I took the camera down. I was hoping the thing had moved on for good. About a week later, I went back out to replace the salt lick, thinking maybe the regular deer would return. The next morning when I checked, there were fresh bite marks on it. I left it out there until it was completely gone. Things were quiet for a while. Then one night, I was going around the house turning off lights before bed. I went to flip off the back porch light, and I saw it standing right there, 20 feet from my back door, in full light. I stopped and stared at it. It stared back. Its eyes were bigger than a normal deer's, and set more forward on its head instead of on the sides. The joints in its legs were thicker, more pronounced. The antlers were definitely twisted. But what really got me was the way it looked at me. It wasn't scared. It was like it was studying me. I backed away from the door and grabbed some pot lids from the kitchen, planning to bang them together to scare it off. When I came back, it was gone. That was 2 years ago. I didn't put out another salt lick until a couple months back. The regular deers have returned, so I'm hoping whatever that thing was has finally moved on. I don't know what was wrong with it. Could have been a disease or a genetic defect. I'm not a wildlife expert. All I know is it wasn't right. The other deers knew it, even my dog knew it. I haven't seen it since that night at the back door, but sometimes when I'm turning off the porch light, I still check, just in case. My name is Alex. I'm 25 and I work the evening shift at a quick stop down on Elm Street. The neighborhood isn't in the best part of town. It's sketchy enough that you keep your keys between your fingers when you go out at night. But on the plus side, the rent is affordable. My shift ended at midnight. Usually I drive myself home. But my girlfriend, Sarah, had to cover a shift at her nursing home and needed the car. We could use the overtime cash, and my apartment is only about a mile away. It was a trade-off I wasn't happy about, but I figured I could handle one walk. My shift that night was stupid. 2 kids tried to pocket some candy bars. An older lady threw a fit because she pumped premium gas before realizing she should have pumped regular and demanded a refund, which I obviously couldn't give her. And some toothless guy was posted right outside by the door, asking everyone that walked in for money. I don't blame him, but management doesn't want them right next to the store, and when the customers complain, I'm the first one to hear it. By the time I clocked out, I was already done with the human race. I took off my name tag, pulled my hood up, and started walking. The first part of the walk is the worst, right down Elm. Every 5 feet, someone is asking me if I got a buck, which I don't. I got to the corner of Elm and Harper and hit the crosswalk button. That's when I saw him, a figure in a black hoodie, walking down Harper toward my corner. The way this person was moving was all wrong. It wasn't a drunken stagger, and it wasn't aggressive. It was stiff. His legs moved, but the hips and shoulders seemed completely disconnected from the motion. The arms didn't swing at all. They were held straight down at his sides. It looked exactly like one of those old black and white movie zombies. Great, I thought. Probably just a crackhead tweaking. The walk sign lit up, and I hurried across Harper, intentionally putting the width of the street between us. I didn't look back until I reached the opposite curb. When I did, I saw the figure in the hoodie had stopped briefly and then made the turn onto Elm, going the same direction I was. I picked up my pace. I kept my head down, but I was constantly glancing in the reflections of the dark storefronts. About half a block later, I could hear their footsteps behind me. I took a quick glance over my shoulder. The hooded figure was about 15 feet back, keeping the exact distance in the same weird walk. They were matching me stride for stride. I decided to test if they were doing it on purpose. My apartment is a straight shot, but I know a side route, a couple of blocks through the residential streets. It adds maybe 5 minutes, but if they followed me off the main road, I'd know something was seriously wrong. I took a sharp left onto an unlit side street. I didn't look back until I was halfway down the block. No one followed. I let out a loud sigh. Okay, I was just being paranoid. Sketchy neighborhood, late shift. I was just jumpy. I relaxed my shoulders and kept walking into the darkness of the side street. 1 block later, as I was nearing the next cross street, I saw a figure approaching from the direction I was going. Black hoodie, and the same walk as before. My blood went cold. There was no way the person I'd just shaken off on the main street could have sprinted this far ahead and cut me off. It wasn't possible. This person had to have been waiting, or they were someone else. But the way they moved was identical. I had a chance to cut back. I immediately took the next right turn, abandoning the side route, and put my back to the wall of a building, trying to look casual. I looked back down the street. The figure reached my turn, paused, and then pivoted to follow me. That confirmed it. It wasn't just walking the same way, it was tracking me. I started walking faster, trying to decide what to do. Sarah was probably swamped at work and wouldn't even answer the phone. The cops were out of the question. There's nothing illegal about walking. Then I heard a voice from behind me. It was muffled by the hoodie, and it wasn't words exactly. It was a broken, stuttering sound, like a CD skipping, or maybe a badly tuned radio. A couple of short guttural syllables, repeated over and over, sometimes high and sometimes low, with no clear rhythm. That was it. I didn't care if I looked crazy or if this was just some ill individual. I bolted. I ran as hard as I could, weaving through 2 more streets, making random turns, trying to put distance between myself and whatever that was. I kept going until the stitch in my side burned and my lungs were screaming. I stopped behind a large oak tree in someone's front yard and leaned against it, trying to suck in air. I was completely lost, but finally it was silent. I took a few minutes to get my bearings and figured out how to cut back toward a main road that led to my street. I was about 2 blocks away from Elm and passing the back of a row of storefronts, the kind of area with dumpsters and deep black alleyways, when I heard it. A voice called for help. It was quiet but clear, and the voice, it sounded exactly like my manager, Gary. Gary's a short, round man in his 50s with a distinctive wheeze when he talks. The sound I heard was an exact replica of his voice, down to the breathiness. I stopped dead in my tracks. It made no sense. Gary lived clear across town. "Alex, help me, Alex." It said my name this time. My blood froze. I could see movement now, a dark shape shifting behind a huge green dumpster a little ways past the mouth of the alley. It couldn't be Gary. No way. But what if it was someone I knew from my building? I was only 2 blocks away. Maybe someone got jumped and I was confusing the voice with someone else I knew. Hesitantly, I took a few steps toward the alley, my phone clutched in my hand. "Who's that? What's wrong?" I called out. The voice, still perfectly mimicking Gary's, answered back. "It's Gary. I need your help, man. Down here." It was weird, but I still almost believed it. Maybe Gary's car broke down and he had to take some weird detour. Or maybe it was some crazy coincidence. I took a slow step into the alley entrance. "Gary, how'd you even get back here? What happened?" The voice that came back wasn't Gary's. It was a man's voice, deeper, but it was just as perfect a copy as Gary's had been. It was the voice of the toothless drunk who had been asking for money outside the store 5 hours ago. I need help." The sound felt wrong. It sounded like a recording that had been paused, quickly reset, and then played back. I started backing up slowly. I can't, I stammered, trying to find an excuse. "I'm calling 911 right now. Just tell me what happened." There wasn't an immediate response, only silence, and then that broken skipping sound again, muffled like someone trying to find the right track on a dial. Need help, Then the figure moved out from behind the dumpster, and I saw it in the weak light reflecting from the main street. Black hoodie and that unmistakable walk, the same as the person who had followed me. It wasn't a crackhead. It wasn't a mugger. It was something that had seen 2 different people that night, the man outside the store and my manager, and was trying to use their voices, but couldn't keep the impression straight, kind of like it had glitched. I didn't try to formulate an excuse or ask any more questions. I spun around and ran. I ran all the way home, not stopping until I slammed the deadbolt on my apartment door. I haven't walked home since. I bought a used bicycle the next day and leave it chained up at work, in case I ever need to use it. I saw Gary the next day. I asked him if anything weird had happened to him lately. Car trouble, being out late, anything. He looked totally confused. He said he went straight home after his shift ended at 5 p.m. I never found out what it was. I just know that whatever was wearing that hoodie, it wasn't human, and it was trying to get me to come closer. You have been watching Neon Noir, a Radion production brought to you by Trapper Dan, the finest in canned survival food.